Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand something very clearly today. God is a God of miracles. He is the creator of all things, and nothing is too hard for him. You may look around at your circumstances and wonder, how can anything good come out of this? But I want to tell you, a miracle is about to happen in your life. This is not a coincidence. This is not something that will happen by chance. It is the plan of God unfolding in your life. When God speaks, he speaks with purpose. He has already decided to do something supernatural in your life. The miracle you need is already on its way. You might not see it yet, but faith is the evidence of things hoped for, the substance of things not yet seen. The miracle you've been waiting for does not need to be understood to be believed. God is a God of miracles, and this truth is not just a theological concept, but a powerful reality that has been demonstrated time and time again throughout history. From the creation of the universe to the smallest details of your life, his power is at work in ways that are beyond human comprehension. A miracle is not simply a supernatural event, it is the intervention of God in the natural course of things. When God steps in, the laws of nature are suspended, and the impossible becomes possible. Throughout the Bible, we see countless examples of God's miraculous power. He parted the Red Sea so the Israelites could escape from Egypt, and he caused the sun to stand still for Joshua in the heat of battle. He healed the sick, gave sight to the blind, and raised the dead. These are not just stories of the past, but testimonies of the past, but testimonies of God's ability to change lives and transform situations in ways that go beyond what we can understand. God is not bound by time or space. He operates in realms that we cannot see, yet he is ever present, working on our behalf. When we talk about God being a God of miracles, it's not just about the big, dramatic moments. Sometimes the most profound miracles happen in the quiet, subtle changes in our hearts, minds, and circumstances. It's a shift in our perspective, a healing of our deepest wounds, or the strength to endure a season of trial. Miracles are not always flashy, but they are always powerful. God is not limited by the obstacles we face. Whether you're dealing with a broken relationship, financial struggles, health issues, or a sense of hopelessness, God's miraculous power can move in every area of your life. He can take what seems impossible and turn it into a testimony of his grace. The key is to recognize that God is always at work, even when we don't see it. His miracles may not always come in the way we expect, but they are always for our good and his glory. The miracles of God are also a reminder that he is personal and intimately involved in our lives. He is not a distant creator who is detached from his creation. He knows our struggles, our fears, and our deepest desires. When he performs a miracle, it's not just for the sake of spectacle, it is an expression of his love and care for his people. God's miracles are an invitation to trust him more deeply, to step into a place of faith where we believe that he can do what seems impossible. A miracle from God is not just about what he does for us, it is about what he does through us. God's miraculous power is not meant to just be witnessed, it is meant to empower us to live in the fullness of his kingdom. When we see miracles happening in our lives, it's a reminder that we are called to carry that same miraculous power to the world around us. God has equipped us to be agents of change, healing, and restoration. We are the vessels through which his miracles can flow into the lives of others. God is a God of miracles, and this truth is a call to expect the impossible. It is an invitation to trust in his limitless power, to believe that he can do more than we can ask or think. It is a challenge to step into a life that is not bound by the natural, but empowered by the supernatural. When we trust in God's miraculous power, we begin to see beyond our limitations and into the boundless possibilities that he offers. With God, all things are possible, and nothing is too difficult for him. Faith is the key that unlocks the door to everything God has promised. It is the foundation of our relationship with God and the mechanism through which his power works in our lives. Without faith, it is impossible to please God, as the Bible tells us. Faith is not just a passive belief in God's existence, it is an active trust in His character, His promises, and His ability to do what He has said He will do. It is the assurance that no matter how things look in the natural realm, God is in control, and His word is true. Faith is often tested in the face of challenges. It is easy to have faith when everything is going well, but true faith is forged in the fires of adversity. When we are faced with situations that seem impossible, when our circumstances are at their worst, faith is the substance that carries us through. It is in these moments that we are called to believe not in what we see, but in what we cannot see. The Apostle Paul says in 2 Corinthians that we walk by faith, not by sight. This is not just a poetic expression, but a declaration of how we must live our lives as believers. If we are to see the miraculous, we must learn to walk in the unseen, trusting that God is working even when we can't perceive it with our natural senses. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. In other words, faith is the currency of the kingdom of God. It is through faith that we take hold of the promises God has made to us. When God speaks a word over our lives, faith is what allows us to take that word and make it real in our lives. Without faith, God's promises remain just words on a page or a dream in our hearts. But when we activate our faith, we bring those promises into reality. Faith is the bridge between the invisible realm of God's promises and the visible realm of our experience. Faith is also a reflection of our understanding of who God is. When we truly know the character of God, His goodness, His faithfulness, His ability, our faith grows stronger. Faith is not about blind optimism or wishful thinking. It is about being fully persuaded in the goodness and power of God. The more we know God, the more we can trust Him in every area of our lives. Faith, then, is not something we generate on our own. It is something that grows as we deepen our relationship with God and understand His nature. The more we trust Him, the more our faith is able to move mountains. In every area of our lives, faith is the key that opens the door to the impossible. Whether it's a healing, a financial breakthrough, or a restoration of relationships, faith is the foundation on which those miracles stand. Faith is what allows us to step into the unknown, to believe that God will make a way where there seems to be no way. It is when we exercise our faith that God can begin to move on our behalf. Faith is the connector between the human and the divine, the natural and the supernatural. It is what enables us to bring the power of God's kingdom into our everyday lives. Faith is also not something that is static. It is something that grows and develops over time. Just as a muscle grows stronger with exercise, our faith grows stronger as we use it. Every trial, every challenge, every victory, and every setback is an opportunity to strengthen our faith. The Bible tells us that faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. This means that the more we immerse ourselves in God's word, the more our faith will be built up. The more we meditate on the promises of God, the more our trust in Him will increase. Our faith is constantly being refined as we walk with God, and the deeper our faith becomes, the more we begin to see His hand at work in our lives. Faith is what connects us to God's will. It is through faith that we align ourselves with His purposes. God is not limited by our limitations, but our faith is what allows Him to operate in our lives in the way He desires. Without faith, we limit the work of God in us and through us. When we choose to believe, when we choose to trust, when we choose to act in faith, we allow God's power to move freely and without hindrance in our lives. Faith is the key to everything that God has for us. Without it, we cannot experience the fullness of His blessings, but with it, we can move mountains and see the impossible become possible. God uses challenges for your breakthrough because He is a master at turning trials into triumphs. It is often in the midst of our most difficult moments that God is doing His deepest work in us. We may see challenges as obstacles, as burdens, or as things that are hindering us, but God sees them as opportunities for growth and transformation. He uses the very situations that seem to be holding us back to propel us forward into the purpose He has for our lives. Throughout Scripture, we see that many of God's greatest works were accomplished through people who faced immense challenges. Moses had to confront Pharaoh and lead a nation out of slavery. David was a young shepherd boy who had to face a giant before becoming king. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers, thrown into prison, and sold into slavery. But it was through those challenges that he eventually rose to a position of power and saved his family. These are just a few examples of how God uses the hardships in our lives to shape us for his greater purpose. Challenges are not meant to destroy us, they are meant to refine us. God uses difficulties to reveal what is inside us, to bring out the hidden potential that we may not even be aware of. It is often when we are stretched beyond our limits that we discover just how much strength, resilience, and faith we really have. Challenges are the testing ground for our character, and it is in these moments of trial that we learn to trust God more fully, to rely on his strength, and to grow in our faith. The breakthrough that God has for you is often on the other side of the challenge you are currently facing. While the difficulty may seem overwhelming, it is important to remember that God is with you in the process. He does not leave you to face challenges alone. He walks with you every step of the way. He uses the trials you face to prepare you for the breakthrough that is coming. The process may be painful, but it is necessary for the growth and transformation that must take place in your life. Sometimes the breakthrough isn't in the external circumstances, but in the internal transformation. God uses challenges to shift our perspective, to realign our hearts, and to help us grow in areas where we need it most. It is in the struggle that we learn perseverance, patience, and the ability to press forward, even when it feels like giving up would be easier. The challenges you face are helping you to develop the character and faith you need to sustain the breakthrough that is coming. Another way God uses challenges is to build a deeper dependence on him. When everything is going smoothly, it's easy to rely on our own strength and abilities. But when we encounter challenges, we are forced to lean on God in ways that we would not have if things were easy. He uses the difficulty to draw us closer to him, to teach us to pray with a greater sense of urgency, and to trust in his provision and guidance. It is in these moments of struggle that we come to know God in a deeper, more intimate way. God also uses challenges to position us for future opportunities. The experiences we gain through overcoming difficulties prepare us for the next level of destiny he has for us. Sometimes we have to go through the fire to be refined and prepared for what God has in store for us. The skills, wisdom, and strength we gain through challenges equip us for the breakthroughs that are ahead. The things you learn in the struggle will be the very things that enable you to step into the fullness of God's plan for your life. When we are facing challenges, it can be easy to question why we are going through them, but God has a purpose in everything. Every challenge you encounter is part of a larger plan that God has for your life. He is not wasting your pain, your disappointment, or your struggle. He is using it to shape you, to build your faith, and to position you for greater things. Your breakthrough is not a matter of if but when, and the challenges you face today are the stepping stones to that breakthrough. The key is to stay faithful and keep your focus on God. Don't let the challenges define you. Instead, let them refine you. Know that God is using every difficulty you encounter to prepare you for something greater. Your breakthrough is on its way, and the challenges you face today are the very things that will enable you to walk in the fullness of what God has prepared for you. The road may be tough, but the reward is greater than you can imagine. Keep trusting, keep pressing forward, and know that God is using the challenges in your life to bring about the breakthrough he has destined for you. Miracles are not just about external changes or events. While many people often associate miracles with dramatic, visible transformations like healing from illness, financial breakthroughs, or sudden solutions to problems, the true essence of a miracle is often what happens within you. A miracle from God has the power to transform you on the inside, altering your mindset, your heart, and the way you see the world. It is the internal transformation that enables you to sustain the blessings and the breakthroughs that come into your life. When God performs a miracle in your life, it is never just for the sake of the outcome. Yes, the miracle might provide relief, healing, or deliverance from a difficult situation, but the deeper purpose is to change you from the inside out. A miracle shifts your perspective, your understanding, and even your identity. It changes how you view yourself, how you see God, and how you relate to the world around you. Many times, People go through life focused solely on external circumstances. They seek solutions to their problems and pray for miracles that would alter their current reality. But the real work of a miracle is not only in changing the circumstances, but also in changing the person who is receiving the miracle. In fact, often the change in your heart and mind is even more profound and lasting than the external result. For example, a person who receives physical healing may experience a change in their gratitude, faith, and understanding of God's power. That internal shift becomes part of their testimony, allowing them to walk in greater faith and trust in God's ability to work in their lives in the future. When you experience a miracle, it forces you to confront your own limitations. It challenges your faith, pushing you to believe for things that once seemed impossible. You are no longer relying on your own abilities, resources, or understanding, but you learn to rely on the power and wisdom of God. This shift in reliance is one of the most profound internal transformations that miracles bring. You begin to understand that your life is not just a series of random events, but that God has a plan for you. You learn to trust in His timing, His methods, and His purposes, even when you don't fully understand them. A miracle also deepens your relationship with God. When God moves in your life in a miraculous way, it creates a new intimacy with Him. You experience His love, His power, and His faithfulness in a way that goes beyond words. It strengthens your bond with Him, building trust and love that transcends surface-level understanding. It is not just that you receive something from God, you gain a new closeness to Him. This transformation in your relationship with God becomes the foundation for the way you live your life moving forward. God's miracles also have the power to heal emotional wounds. When a person experiences a miracle, it often triggers a deep inner healing. Whether it's a healing of past trauma, forgiveness of old hurts, or freedom from fear and anxiety, miracles can touch the emotional places in your life that no one else can see. Many people carry deep scars, and while they may pray for change in their circumstances, God desires to heal them on a deeper level. His miracles are not just about changing what is visible, but also about healing the broken parts of your soul. This emotional healing enables you to walk forward in life with a renewed sense of peace, purpose, and joy. Furthermore, miracles transform you by renewing your mind. In Romans, we are told that the renewing of our minds is essential for transformation. When you experience a miracle, it recalibrates the way you think. You begin to see things from God's perspective rather than your own limited view. This change in mindset allows you to navigate life with greater wisdom, confidence, and understanding. Your thought patterns shift from negative to positive, from fear to faith, and from doubt to trust. Your view of possibilities changes, and you no longer see yourself as bound by your circumstances, but empowered by the limitless potential that comes from a relationship with God. The internal transformation brought about by a miracle also leads to spiritual growth. When God works in your life in a miraculous way, it invites you into a deeper walk with Him. You begin to seek Him more earnestly, to desire His presence more passionately, and to understand His word more profoundly. Miracles deepen your faith and understanding, opening your eyes to the reality of God's kingdom and His power. They stir a desire within you to live a life that honors God and reflects His goodness to the world. A miracle has the power to transform you into the person God created you to be. As you encounter His power in a personal way, you are changed. This transformation equips you to face future challenges with greater strength and trust. It gives you the wisdom to handle success with humility, the patience to endure difficulties with hope, and the grace to extend kindness and forgiveness to others. The internal change that comes from experiencing a miracle is not just about receiving a gift from God. It is about becoming the person who can fully live out the purposes He has for you. Expecting the impossible is not about hoping for the improbable or wishing for things that seem out of reach. It is about fully embracing the truth that with God, all things are possible. Our human limitations often prevent us from seeing beyond the boundaries of what we know and understand. We live in a world where logic and reason dominate, and often what we believe is possible is confined to what we can see, touch, or explain. But when we look through the lens of faith, we discover that God operates in a realm that far exceeds the natural limitations of this world. The impossible is not something to be feared or doubted, but something that can become a reality when we align ourselves with God's power. The Bible is filled with examples of people who expected the impossible and saw God's miraculous power at work in their lives. Abraham was promised a son when he was well beyond the age of having children. Yet he believed God's promise, and through faith, the impossible became possible. Sarah, his wife, laughed at the idea of having a child in her old age, but God did the impossible and Isaac was born. When the Israelites were trapped at the Red Sea, it seemed like there was no way out, but God parted the waters and made a way where there was none. These are not just stories from the past, they are testimonies of God's unchanging nature. The God who did the impossible in their lives is the same God who is at work in our lives today. Expecting the impossible requires a shift in perspective. It requires us to move beyond our natural understanding and trust in a God who operates in ways we cannot always comprehend. It means stepping out of the realm of the possible and entering into the realm of faith. When you expect the impossible, you acknowledge that your situation may be beyond your ability to fix or understand, but you also recognize that nothing is too difficult for God. Your limitations do not limit God's power. The circumstances that seem insurmountable are only temporary in the face of God's miraculous intervention. One of the reasons we often struggle to expect the impossible is because we are conditioned by what we see. Our experiences, our fears, and our doubts cloud our ability to fully trust in God's power. We may have faced disappointments in the past, and those experiences shape our belief in what is possible. But faith challenges the status quo. It calls us to trust in what we cannot see, to believe that God is working behind the scenes even when we can't perceive it. Expecting the impossible is about choosing to believe that God can do what no one else can do. It means letting go of your own reasoning and embracing the supernatural possibilities that God offers. When you begin to expect the impossible, your outlook on life changes. You start to look for God's hand at work in every situation, even the challenging ones. You recognize that every obstacle can become an opportunity for God to reveal His power. Your mindset shifts from one of limitation to one of expectation. You begin to see doors opening where you once saw walls. You start to believe that what seemed like an insurmountable mountain can be moved by faith. It's not about ignoring the reality of your situation, but rather trusting that God can change that reality in an instant. Expecting the impossible also requires persistence. It's easy to lose hope when things don't change right away, but faith is a journey, not a one-time event. Even when you don't see immediate results, you continue to trust, knowing that God's timing is perfect. Your faith becomes a declaration that you believe in God's ability to make the impossible possible, no matter how long it takes or how difficult the path may seem. Every day that you continue to expect the impossible is a day that you are growing in faith, building a stronger trust in God's power. To expect the impossible is also to align yourself with God's will. It's not about expecting random things or focusing on personal desires alone. It's about trusting that God's plan for your life is greater than you can imagine and believing that He is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that you ask or think. When you expect the impossible, you submit your desires and dreams to God, knowing that He is faithful to lead you in the right direction. You begin to see that His ways are higher than your ways, and His thoughts are higher than your thoughts. The impossible isn't just about what you want, it's about trusting that God knows what's best for you and that His plans are always for your good. The impossible is not something to fear, but something to embrace. When you expect the impossible, you position yourself to witness the power of God in ways you never thought possible. You open yourself to the supernatural possibilities of God's intervention, where miracles can happen and the laws of nature are overcome by divine power. God specializes in the impossible. When you expect the impossible, you are declaring that you trust in a God who can move mountains, calm storms, heal the sick, and transform lives. The impossible becomes the place where God's power is displayed, and it becomes the place where your faith is made stronger. Expect the impossible, because with God, all things are truly possible. In conclusion, expecting the impossible is not just about anticipating the extraordinary, but about placing our trust in a God whose power knows no bounds. It is about stepping beyond the limitations of our own understanding and embracing the truth that with God, nothing is impossible. As we face challenges, whether in our personal lives, our health, our relationships, or our dreams, we are reminded that God is capable of transforming any situation. He is the same God who parted the Red Sea, who healed the sick, and who raised the dead. He is still at work today, doing the impossible in our lives. When we choose to expect the impossible, we open ourselves to His miraculous power, trusting that He can do more than we can ask or imagine. Our faith becomes the key that unlocks the door to the supernatural, and through God's intervention, we experience breakthroughs that go beyond our human comprehension. Let us not limit ourselves by what we see, but boldly declare that with God, all things are possible. Expect the impossible, for God is always at work, turning the improbable into the possible and bringing his kingdom to earth in ways that astound and transform us.